Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Fantasy Speak. This is our quarterback edition of players to target for your fantasy playoffs. I am Ryan with Sports Stuff Hub. You can also check these out on sportsstuffhub.com, and you can also like us on Facebook at Sports Stuff Hub. Now, what we're doing here, we're getting a little late into the season, so we're going to start covering some fantasy football playoff targets for you to go after for Week 15, 16, and 17. Week 14 is in the books already. Week 15 kicks off here in the next 48 hours, roughly. So our first game coming up this week is going to be Tampa Bay and St. Louis on Thursday night, with an odd matchup coming up on Saturday. I'm not sure why the NFL posted a Saturday game, but the New York Jets at the Dallas Cowboys. So going into your playoffs, these guys that I'm about to talk about, I'm going to give you three quarterbacks to target. These aren't necessarily going to be quarterbacks that are your elite quarterbacks in the NFL. I'm not going to cover that in these types of segments. What I'm going to cover is guys that are hopefully on your waiver wire, or guys that are sitting on somebody's bench because they're sitting behind Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady or Carson Palmer. So maybe you could make a trade to get these guys depending on your trade regulations in your fantasy football league. But maybe you could make a trade if one of these guys is sitting on somebody's bench to help you out going forward if you don't have a decent quarterback or if you just have bad matchups going into the playoffs. So we're going to get started here. I'm going to mention this is fantasy football only. This is in no way, shape, or form any indications of how I feel about the teams going into the playoffs or how well I'll think they're going to do, the overall team is going to do the rest of the season or going into the playoffs. I just want to make sure that we're clear here, and this is all based off of stats that I've pulled up and looked at, as well as just my personal opinion. So we're going to start here first. My first quarterback that I would suggest to target going into your playoffs would be Ryan Tannehill. He's got some favorable matchups the next 2 weeks. His third matchup is so-so, but he'll be playing from behind. So we're going to jump right into this. This coming week at San Diego. San Diego's defense has not been very good this year, alone from their bright shining star in the cornerback position, who has become one of my favorite cornerbacks to watch in shutdown mode, is Jason Verrett. So their defense overall has been giving up a lot of points, and it's indicative by their record. They're the worst team in the AFC West. I just don't see them being able to stop Miami, especially with the emergence of Devontae Parker. Jarvis Landry and Devontae Parker are becoming a pretty good combo, and once Matthews gets back, I think they'll end up with a pretty good trio. So expect Ryan Tannehill to be able to throw against the San Diego defense. I think he should easily be able to pull up 250 yards and a pair of touchdowns. He struggled a little bit earlier in the season. Obviously, the head coaching change, offensive coordinator change, but I think they're starting to get things settled down. He's been throwing for, it's been inconsistent for him, let's just say that. But he has been at least throwing touchdowns consistently since week 10. He's thrown a touchdown in 5 straight games, which is a positive. His second week, and this is going to be, I think, probably the one he's licking his chops over, his best matchup that he's probably going to have all season long against Indianapolis at home. Indianapolis has been horrible on the road. They've been horrible at home. They've just been not good. Jacksonville just hung 50 on them. The week before that, Pittsburgh went all over them. It's just been, it's been a bad season for Indy. They just have not been what people anticipated them to be. I was fooled by him to start the season off. So, Indianapolis, solid matchup for him. Now, his third and final game of this 3-game stretch, and it's the last game of the season, against New England. Granted, it's at home, divisional matchup, but New England's pass defense is probably the best of the trio. They've been limiting people to significant short yardage. They're actually the 6th best pass defense in the league. They've only been allowing 231 yards per game, and they've only given up 17 touchdowns. They've also had 10 interceptions. Malcolm Butler has been playing really well. A couple of the other guys not so much, but I do feel that Tannehill will be playing from behind most of that game because I believe Edelman is supposed to be back for that game. Amendola and Gronk are already back. I know Blunt just went on to the IR, but his receivers should all be back in full force, which means that New England's probably going to put up quite a few points, which is going to force the Dolphins to throw quite a bit, especially in the second half. So I would expect Tannehill to be able to put up some decent numbers The last time they played in Week 8 at New England, Tannehill threw for 300 yards, which is a positive, but he didn't throw for any touchdowns, and he threw 2 picks. Not the greatest of numbers. In my league, he put up 11 points. Not the greatest, but I would say that he at least has a chance, especially with trying to play spoiler to New England at that point, because I don't think that Miami's going to be in any sort of hunt for playoff contention at that point, just based off of the matchups for the teams that are in front of them. My next quarterback to target, I think, has a better Week 17 matchup. Matt Stafford, Detroit Lions. Stafford has been he's been wishy-washy as well this season. To start the season, the Lions offense was just atrocious. They couldn't score points. They were throwing interceptions. They were turning the ball over. They just weren't doing anything. I think he maybe had one good game in the first 7 weeks of the season. But since Jim Bob Cooter took over as offensive coordinator, calling the plays, they have done quite a bit better. I think they now have 4 wins just since Cooter's been the offensive coordinator. Expect some better things out of him. His matchups going forward are at New Orleans, which New Orleans is one of the lower-ranked pass defenses in the NFL. In fact, they're the 3rd worst pass defense in the NFL, allowing 278 yards per game and 36 pass touchdowns allowed to only 6 interceptions. Their defense has been horrible. They gambled big by going after a particular former Patriot, former Seahawk that just hasn't panned out. I think he's got more penalties on him than he has knockdowns or good plays. So expect New Orleans to give up quite a few passing yards in that game as well. And if their offense is clicking, it's going to force Stafford to throw the ball quite a bit as well. Week 16 against San Francisco. San Francisco, again, one of the bottom-tier pass defenses in the NFL. San Francisco is ranked 6th worst pass defense in the NFL, allowing 268 yards a game, only 18 pass touchdowns to 9 interceptions. But again, San Francisco struggled most of the season. I think their defense has actually played a little bit better the last few games, aside from Cleveland, the drubbing they just took by Cleveland. But San Francisco is just one of those teams that has just been in upheaval after the last couple seasons, with Harbaugh leaving, with all the guys retiring out of the blue, especially. But I expect Detroit to be able to put up some points against them, especially at home. Week 17 for Stafford, again, like I said, his toughest matchup, but I think this is going to be a better matchup if you happen to snag him over Tannehill, because they're playing at Chicago. Chicago is, I think, they're the 5th or 6th, they're the number 2 ranked pass defense in the NFL, allowing only 215 yards, but 22 pass touchdowns, only 7 interceptions. One of the reasons why they have allowed more touchdowns with less yardage is also because of some of the turnovers that they suffered, especially earlier in the year. I don't see Chicago I don't see them stopping Stafford completely, especially since the offense is clicking much better. Chicago and Detroit, last time they matched up, let's see here. Stafford threw for 405 yards, 4 touchdowns, and an interception against him. In my league, he put up 45 points. And that was in Detroit. So this one's going to be in Chicago. I could see this matchup being another high scoring event. Neither of the defenses are playing to the overall level that people wanted them to be, or that they expected to be. So I could see it being another. I don't expect 400 yards out of Stafford or 4 touchdowns, but hey, it could be a 300-yard day with 2 to 3 touchdowns out of him. Just because, number one, it's a divisional game, and you typically throw divisional games out the window when it comes to stats. The next quarterback I'm gonna discuss here is not the best quarterback in the NFL, but I want to make this clear how I'm wording this. He has the best matchups going forward in the NFL. The weeks 15, 16, and 17, statistically, there's no other quarterback playing defenses. Let me rephrase that. That's playing pass defenses that are this bad. All 3 teams rank 12th or worst for pass defense. Alex Smith, Kansas City Chiefs. Now, Alex Smith hasn't exactly been Mr. Blow the Doors off the offenses. He's only had 2 games this entire season where he's hit 30 points based off of the scoring in my league. and that was week 1 and week 8. But against bad defenses, he has done really well. Their run game will probably do very well with Sharkhandrick West and Ware, but expect Alex Smith to be able to throw the ball. His first matchup this coming weekend is at Baltimore. Baltimore is hands down just an epic fail this year compared to what people's expectations were. Now, granted, injuries have played a big part in their demise this year, but it is what it is. You still put the team on the field, you still play the game. So they're at Baltimore. I can see them throwing 300 plus yards on them. Baltimore has been allowing 248 per game, pass yards per game. That ranks them 12th worst. They've also given up 27 pass touchdowns. They've only got 4 interceptions. Bad ratio for them. I could see Alex Smith marching up and down the field on them all day long. I don't see a problem with it. Week 16, another bad matchup. Cleveland, another AFC North team that's in the bottom cellar right now. So Cleveland, 10th worst pass defense, just a little bit worse than Baltimore, allowing 253 yards per game, 26 total pass touchdowns, only 8 interceptions. Hayden, I don't even think is playing this weekend. I think he might have even been on or gone on IR. But either way, Cleveland's team has just fallen apart. They're a mess this year between the quarterback controversies they've had, Johnny Manziel's partying problems, whatever the case may be. Cleveland hasn't been doing anywhere near what people were crossing their fingers for. So expect Alex Smith to, again, just like against Baltimore, should be able to march up and down the field without any problems. Now, his best matchup, Week 17. So if you can get this guy, Week 17 against Oakland, I get it. Khalil Mack just had 5 sacks against Denver. Okay, great. But Kansas City's offensive line is playing better than Denver's offensive line. Okay? Oakland is ranked 5th worst, 271 yards per game passing allowed. 271. They've only allowed 21 touchdowns. They've got 11 interceptions, thanks in part to Charles Woodson. Charles Woodson having his renaissance year. I mean, the guy's just been playing great. But they are still one of the worst pass defenses in the NFL. Now, if Khalil Mack can get a beat on Alex Smith, it may change some things up. But statistically speaking, Alex Smith should be able to have no problems against Kansas City. Not against Kansas City, against Oakland. Alex Smith earlier in the year against Oakland, 2 weeks ago, 162 yards, 2 touchdowns. Not eye-popping numbers, but they were long touchdowns. And in my league, he put up 29 points, which we have weighted touchdowns for distance and stuff like that, so that helps with his points. But 162 and 2 touchdowns, and Kansas City won the game, obviously, with their 7-game win streak they're on right now. I don't really see anybody standing in the way of Kansas City right now. I think they're going to win out. Regardless, that's a different subject. But Oakland, I don't see putting up too much of a threat against stopping them. So Alex Smith, definitely, he would be the one to target. He's available in a lot of leagues. He's available in my league, for instance. I could see him being a fantasy spoiler for a lot of people if you can get your hands on him. So anyway, that was our 3 quarterbacks to target for going into your 2015 fantasy football playoffs. I am Ryan with Sports Stuff Hub. Check us out online, sportsstuffhub.com. Check us out on our Facebook, Sports Stuff Hub. We'll have these videos posted on YouTube as well as our website and Facebook. You can check them out for more fantasy tips. Check out our fantasy tab.